So I was looking around the soundtrack collection for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and realized that Cloud still only has 2 songs on the stage and no spirits representing his series aside from himself. So I'm like, fuck it, if Square Enix is being so anal about their own IPs, they might as well make their own Smash Bros. While they're at it. Thinking of 40 characters is relatively tough, not because of the limitations like Microsoft's IPs, but because there's so many Square Enix games to choose from. I'm gonna be honest, there may be some odd inclusions, and I do apologize for that, but I want to focus more on the popular franchises. That isn't to say that there isn't gonna be some surprises. I've at the very least tried my best to satisfy some old school Square Enix fans, as I think by including some of them, that would spark some interest in Square Enix headquarters. I'll be organizing the characters announced from release date and their own retrospective games, so without further ado, let's jump into it. Let's answer the question, what if Square Enix had a Smash Bros? Our first character has to be from Square's long-lasting franchise, Dragon Quest. This is Erdrick, the main character for the first Dragon Quest game and the character to appear in future Dragon Quest games afterwards, so as the mascot of the series, it's obvious who to pick from. Alongside... our first unlockable character, the main baddie of the Dragon Quest games, the Dragonlord. He's a staple and infamous villain in the Dragon Quest video game, so it's appropriate for him to be included. As for why I made him an unlockable, I want to run with a certain theme for most of these unlockable characters, and that is either characters that are not well known, characters that may cause some sort of shock value when you unlock them, or in this case, villain characters. Speaking of which... Hey there guys, last minute editing here. So I was somewhat misinformed about the title of this next coming game, I'm not sure if that's a word, but it's actually called King's Knight, not King's Quest. I've been very misinformed about the title of the game, and you may have noticed that I will be saying King's Quest throughout this section of the video. I do apologize for that. It is actually called King's Knight. I just need to make that quick correction, that's all. You guys remember this game back in the NES? This is King's Quest, one of Square Enix's oldest IPs. This was not a good game by any means, let's not kid ourselves here, but I wanted to include Rayjack, the main character of this game. Considering how they actually rebooted the series for some reason, I figured, hey, this must be in Square Enix's radar somehow, so why the fuck not? I get it though, this game is pretty hated amongst a lot of Square Enix's fans, but at the very least, I think it's a cool idea to beat the living shit out of him if you really hate him, making him more like a joke character, I guess? I don't know, I just thought it was a funny idea. And here we are, the Final Fantasy series, Square Enix's most popular franchise. I'm going to put in Black Mage for the roster. He is essentially an iconic archetype in the Final Fantasy series. His outfit is worn by a lot of Final Fantasy party members, and I think we should appreciate Final Fantasy Origins by including the Black Mage. Up next, from Dragon Quest V, we got Bianca. She's another relatively popular Dragon Quest character, so I decided to add her in. She won't be an Echo Fighter of Erdrick though, I want her to have her own unique moveset. She uses a bow and arrow, so obviously we gotta make her an archer type of a character. Keep away, but vulnerable when close up. Secret of Mana, one of Square Enix's staple game back in the SNES era that also recently got a remake on PS4 and PC. For characters, I'm gonna include all 3 main characters, Randy, Prim, and Popoi. They each have their own style and uniqueness towards their attacks, so let them fight how they would fight normally in their game. As for the bad guy... this is Thanatos, the main bad guy for Secret of Mana. He would diversify more of the villainous characters in Square Enix's roster, so let's go with him. And here lies Chrono Trigger, another staple game from the SNES era. I don't feel too comfortable with including every playable character in Chrono Trigger, since there's way too many of them. So for now, let's go with the main and popular ones. I'd win for Chrono, Marley, and Luca. Chrono would have a sword, so not much new in the sword character department, but Marley would have her own unique assets with her crossbow, while Luca can be sort of an engineer type of character, building things on the battlefield to help her and using her hammer as a close range attack. As for the bad guys... Magus, once again expanding the roster of villains. Magus would fit in well within Square Enix's character roster. He has a scythe, so that would make him more of a long-range type of character, and he could also blend into the shadows and counterattack. This would give him more of a teleport ability or a sneak attack as well. I don't know anything about this character aside from the fact that he's a talking lizard, but from what I've heard, he's relatively a popular character back in the PlayStation era, so I gotta include him. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking. When the hell did Square Enix own this character? Gex was never actually published by Square in any sort of fashion, and you are correct to assume so. But you know what Square Enix does own? Eidos Interactive. And who did Eidos Interactive create? Gex. This would make for a perfect hidden character. It's a character that's so out of left field, someone you don't really expect in the world of Square Enix's JRPG games, but someone who is also part of the Square Enix's franchises, so I gotta include this talking lizard. Speaking of Eidos Interactive, Lara Croft from Tomb Raider is a huge no-brainer as well. Being another famous PlayStation icon, and even to this day with the reboot and second reboot, Lara Croft is still a famous character, so having her fight alongside Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest characters would be a blast to see. Personally, I kinda want them to use her model back in the PS2 and GameCube era, but I get the feeling that her recent addition in 2013 and Rise of the Tomb Raider would be more profitable, so her model in that game would be used more often. I don't think it's that big of a deal though. After all, Smash Bros has Link garnering his Breath of the Wild attire, so I'm perfectly fine with this option. Although an alternate costume would be beneficial, I feel. Of course, when we think Final Fantasy and Square Enix, we have to include the character that's associated with the most sold Final Fantasy game. Cloud would be an obvious addition to the game. He uses his own limit break system, his Buster Sword to fight, but what's a good hero without an equally fascinating villain? Sephiroth, to this date, is the most popular bad guy within the Final Fantasy series. When you think of villains for the Final Fantasy series, this should be your first choice. He may be able to fly with his one wing, his sword is relatively long range, and his standing tall demeanor could provide for a tall character that's certainly to be feared. It was difficult trying to pick a Busta Groove representative, mostly because there's not really a mascot per se, but I chose Kitty N, mostly because of her theme song sounds really catchy. She can fight with a variety of different dance moves, utilizing a lot of J-pop choreography. Never played Parasite Eve before, but this game has a cult following that's also awaiting a fourth game in the series, so let's add Aya, the main protagonist. She has a gun, so yeah, she'll just shoot around the area, I guess. I'm sure an actual Parasite Eve fan can do a better job of making a moveset compared to me. Okay, here's another last-minute attempt into correcting myself. For some reason, I had Goemon on the mind and assumed that he was Brave Fencer Musashi. Goemon is a character from Konami, and he was the one that's able to use like various of different moves, various of different items, much like Zelda. But for some reason, I assumed he was Brave Fencer Musashi, so I need to really correct myself there in case anyone's wondering, and I really gotta stop scripting these videos in like midnight because goddamn, I really fucked up this time. For the sake of argument, Brave Fencer Musashi is just gonna be another sword fighter with a smaller hitbox. He'll have his own unique moveset though, so he's not gonna be a clone of anyone. Don't worry about that. Really sorry about this. I really fucked up this time. I think this is probably like the worst fuck up I've ever done when it comes to researching this. Yeah, that's all I've got to say. Again. Oh my goodness, I forgot about this game. This was awesome when I was a kid. How come this game never got a sequel? Well, Brave Fencer Musashi was an awesome 3D platformer, and the character design for Musashi himself is so adorable and cute. He's another sword fighter user, sure, but he plays a lot more like a Link, or in this case, I guess a Toon Link, with the amount of different weapons he could utilize. He's also small too, so he could bring in a more cartoony side to Square Enix's more realistic depictions. Garrett is a stealth ninja-like protagonist from the series Thief. I've only played the reboot back in 2014, and overall I hated it, but the original from what I've heard is a staple classic, so sure, why not add him in? Now, I don't really imagine him to be fast, and that would kind of break his caricature. He's all about killing or sneaking past opponents without being noticed, and when he does, he's not much of a fighter. This philosophy I feel would be really hard to implement, but here's my idea. Every time he attacks an enemy from behind or above, he deals more damage and knockback, so he'll be more aerial oriented. Anytime an enemy sees him and plays defensively, he'll need to find a more different tactic to attack, otherwise he'll just be a sitting duck. Like I said, he may not be too popular considering his recent games flopped, but he'll be more of an unlockable, and I'd recommend using his 1998 model rather than his recent incarnation. Adam Jensen. He never asked for this, but he's joining in anyway. Being from the acclaimed Deus Ex series, with his recent game Deus Ex Human Revolution being one of the best-selling Square Enix IPs made in the West, he'll be able to use his augmentation abilities to hack into various different electronic equipments. It'll just simply decrease enemy attacks and defense gameplay-wise. I'd also imagine him to be somewhat of a good support character with some keep-away aspects as well, at the cost of being defenseless. Agent 47, another stealth action game from... wait, Warner Brothers? I thought this series was owned by Square Enix. It was originally made by Eidos, and since Square bought them, I assumed that they owned all their properties. What the hell happened here? Apparently from my research, Square sold the rights to the Hitman series to Warner Brothers. Well, I guess even though they are associated with Square Enix in some sort of fashion, Agent 47 can't really be part of this Square Enix Smash Bros. Since they're technically owned by a different company, and according to my videos, that would just break the rules simply. Anyways, here we have Neptune. Well, no duh, it's in the title of the series. Based on the unreleased Sega Neptune, Neptune would fit in quite well as another anime-esque type of fighter. Oh. I actually broke one of my rules in my early videos. Okay, well, fuck it. I'm still gonna include Agent 47. He was at the very least 1 point related to Square Enix. Just imagine him as kind of like a third-party rep or something. I really do like the Hitman games, and his attacks with CQC and stealth abilities would bring more creativity to the game. Just kind of pissed that this acquisition made my job a lot more harder than it needed to be, but whatever. My video. Out comes the realistic murder simulator and into a cartoony murder simulator against nobodies. Sora can't be more of an obvious choice. Kingdom Hearts 3 is coming out, and the game series is very popular with its sequels and prequels and spin-offs and mobile gacha games. Insert same joke I did 2 videos ago. He'll use his Keyblades to fight and utilize a variety of different forms for his final smash. While we're on the topic of Kingdom Hearts, I'd say Riku has a good chance as well. He's more a slower but more powerful echo of Sora, and I would also want his darkness ability as an alternate costume or a final smash if possible. Jessica is another famous Dragon Quest character originating in Dragon Quest VIII, and currently it's considered the best Dragon Quest game to this date, so let's have a character that's mostly associated with that game. She's a magic user, so she'll utilize more magic attacks with a variety of different projectiles or hard-hitting spells. In terms of physical attacks, aside from maybe just whacking people with her stick, she also has a very powerful butt attack, so I think she'll be able to kill her opponents with her ass. Kinda reminds me of a combination of Rosalina and Peach in a way. Rico Rodriguez, the main character for the Just Cause series. I imagine him to have one of the best recoveries since most of the time you're hurled away quite a ways in the air. Other than that, he also has a gun, so let's just design him as a shooter. Not exactly an echo of Aya, I do want him to be his own unique character. The World Ends With You is a classic DS game era with a remastered version on the Nintendo Switch. I'd say adding the main character Neku would be a good choice. He utilizes his pins to deal a variety of different damages like a slash attack or pyrokinesis. So more or less, imagine him as a Robin from Fire Emblem, but more agile thanks to his unique flow motion abilities. Okay, I'm gonna really hate myself for doing this, but if I have to be objective as possible, Square Enix seems to really love Lightning, being the fact that she appears in front and center throughout all the games she is associated with, despite not even being the main character for said game, and having her milk the crap out of in advertisements and even being a mascot for a clothing brand. What? Of course, personally, if I were to make a list, I would have her far away from the series as Final Fantasy XIII, not just for me, but for the majority of fans was a low point in the series, but sales figures dictate that it was one of the most highly grossing games in the series, and with the amount of market the game is associated with, Lightning has a pretty damn good shot at being another Final Fantasy representative. She will at the very least make for a fun character. She's pretty basic in terms of fighting style, so I imagine her to be very beginner friendly. At the start of the game, she's naturally a commando, a Ravager, and a medic, so she'll not only be able to attack with her sword, but utilize magic spells and heal herself and her teammates as well. Going back to Kingdom Hearts, I think a character from Birth by Sleep would fit in well. Ventus looks too similar to Sora, and while Terra is a good choice as well, I won't be including him for reasons I'll get back to later. So the last choice would be Aqua. She might be a semi-echo of Sora and Riku in a way, but I think her animations and movesets would grant her the ability to be her own unique character. She's more magic-oriented, so let's just give her more projectiles, like, well, water, as her name is Aqua after all. But as the reason why I'm not including Terra into the roster is... well, spoiler alert. Xehanort. He looks like Terra already and borrows a couple of moves from him, so I'd say an eviler version of Terra would be more interesting as a fighter rather than a regular Terra. He has a phantom on his back, so this could be used as like a puppet-like ally or a defensive shield, and when you attack the phantom enough, it'll be immobilized for a short time. Otherwise, he'll use various projectiles, various special moves like reversing the opponent's controls, magnetizing the enemy away or in front of Xehanort. He'll be another creative villain fighting alongside the darkness. While everyone's all excited about Nier Automata's reception, did everyone forget that it was also a sequel? I have never heard anyone talk about the original Nier, which is a shame since it's still one of my favorite Square Enix titles. To commemorate, I'd say let's include Kaine from the original Nier. Despite her character design and physique, she utilizes a razor blade that's practically big, so she'll be a relatively average-sized character that can deal a lot of damage. She's also pretty fast, and overall I'd say this archetype of a glass cannon would be perfect for her, a character that's really fast and powerful at the cost of dying easily. Now I ask you, does this game have way too many Japanese characters for your liking? Well, look no further, we got Wei Shen, a Chinese character this time. Sleeping Dogs is essentially a Chinese Grand Theft Auto, with Wei Shen having more stellar kung fu abilities, and that's how I'm animating him. Using different parries and attacks, Wei Shen should be quick and nimble. Now he does use a gun as well. I'd say this one would be more of a special attack, but Wei Shen is a relatively fast and combo-oriented character. Giving him a projectile would kind of be making him broken, so I'd say his projectile would deal damage, but no knockback, similar to Fox's laser. From the Dragonlord series, we got Zero. She's a girl with a hibiscus on her eye that can also... This game is weird. I've only played this game once and really hated the frame rate, but my goodness, is this game filled with some sort of gross out humor and a lot of unnecessary angst and edge. But it's also kind of unique, I guess. I don't know. This series does have somewhat of a cult following, so hey, let's get her to those guys, but you're gonna have to unlock her first. She's a little too niche in my opinion, so she'll be more of a shocking surprise if anything. With even more JRPGs upon Square Enix IP holders, we've got Bravely Default. Anyone from the first game would actually fit very well, but I'm gonna include Angus, mostly because she's the main character of the game. She's magic oriented, so I'd say give her some magic spells and you're good to go. This is Max from Life is Strange. I have no idea how the hell you implement her at all. Think about it, we got genetically enhanced soldiers, magical warriors, pain-induced warmongers, silent assassins, kung fu policemen, the incarnation of darkness, and this is just a high school girl. Max is clearly not set for the battlefield. She does have the ability to rewind time, and she's a photographer. That's really it. She's not strong, she's not agile, it's going to be very difficult making a moveset for her. The only thing she does have is the ability to control time, rewind time, and that's really it. She can maybe rewind time to fix her mistakes on the battlefield, but that would lead to a very campy playstyle without some sort of limitation. Well, she would have a spiral bar to indicate how much time she has control, and hey, maybe this could branch into some ability of slowing down enemies, buffing Max's speed. But like I said, she's not really a fighter, so having her punch and kick other opponents wouldn't be very faithful to her character. On the other hand, I do have a fantastic idea for her final smash. And I'm gonna stop you right there, Base. This is not necessarily a fuck up or anything. This is more of a quick summary as to what I was explaining for her final smash. Simply just look at the ending for the game, and that's pretty much it. The only reason why I cut off real quickly is just to make this video go a little bit more faster, because I think I went to unnecessary details of spoiling the entirety of the game to explain what her final smash would be like, and the last thing I need is a second spoiler warning, so yeah, that's pretty much it. Other than that, I still have no idea how the hell she would fight without punching or kicking, so I don't know, you guys pick. Noctis from Final Fantasy 15. Well, Square's been milking the crap out of Lightning, and they're pretty much doing the same with Noctis, so yeah, this is pretty much the same story for Noctis. On the bright side, I do like 15 more than 13, so it's not completely devastating. Just copy and paste how he plays in Tekken 7. His moveset should speak for itself. 2B, yeah, I mentioned Nier beforehand, so including 2B would be a no-brainer as well. Whereas Noctis was a guest character in Tekken 7, 2B is a guest character in Soul Calibur 6, so once again, just copy her moveset from that game and you get yourself another playable character. The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit. While Captain Spirit in reality is nothing more than a kid with a wild imagination, let's make it a reality by having his actual superpowers do the fighting for him. He has magnetisms, mind-crushing abilities, heat lasers, x-ray vision. Jesus Christ, dude, don't make your superpowers that OP. Yeah, we're gonna have to nerf him slightly just to make him viable, but he'll still retain all his superpowers just so that we can make him more faithful. And for our final character roster, I want to pick a character from Octopath Traveler, Square Enix's most recent IP. The thing is, this game has 8 main characters and all of them have unique stories specifically catered to them, and if I want to include them all, we'd have 7 more characters than normally. There are 2 main characters I feel might be the main mascots for the game, that being Ulberich and Primrose, since both these characters are the first characters you play in the demo. Out of these 2 characters, it's honestly a toss-up. Both characters offer a more unique playstyle compared to the characters already introduced, Ulberich being the character that can utilize not only sword attacks, but also lance attacks as well, and Primrose having the power to invigorate and seduce allies and fight with a dagger in darkness. Both of these characters do have similar traits towards other Square Enix characters, but both are relatively creative in combat. Ultimately, I decided to go with Primrose, but like I said, Ulberich is a pretty damn close pick as well. I think her character design is a lot more unique, and she has one of the best backstories out of everyone in the cast. Hey there guys, if you missed out on the first 2 videos I made in this series, definitely feel free to check that out, and if you missed my sneak preview on the next video I will be making, it will be a part 2 of the Sega Smash Bros. Video, where I add in some extra characters to match up Ultimate's roster. As for the next company I plan on covering, this one, I'll be honest, I'm having a tough time trying to come up with 40 characters already. I've made a thumbnail, so it's definitely on my mind, but if I can't think of enough characters, I might want to scrap that and cover a different company. I don't know, we'll see in the future. In other video-related news, I've also finished recording the results for another Smash Recovery Challenge, so be on the lookout for that in the future, and for my next Compare and Contrast episode, I will be covering 2 SpongeBob games, Battle for Bikini Bottom and the movie. I'm sure that people my age might remember this from their childhood, so definitely look forward to that. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching.